Thank you, Eldad. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next episode of Masters of Product. In our room today, we have my good friend Eldad Forman. Eldad is a learning leader at SentinelOne, where he's actually helping drive LLM and AI adoption across the country. Across the company. That would be a great job too, no? He has an over a decade of years of experience in technical corporate training um, and has previously held leadership roles at Microsoft, Taboola, and Amdocs. Our topic for today, which is actually very close to our heart and my heart and Eldad's hat, is how he's actually driving AI adoption at SentinelOne. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. I help product organizations leverage AI to be more effective and efficient. And you can find out more about me at echo-point.com. Eldad, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here. You and I talk all the time, so I'm glad that we can finally get it on camera. So thank you for coming.
And thank you for having me. It's with great pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And we do have some people listening in. So if you guys are listening in on LinkedIn or YouTube, please drop a comment. Let us know where you're from. And by the way, the whole point of this conversation is going to be interactive. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in and we'll make sure we address them. But Eldad, if it's okay with you, let's just get started. Yes. You and I started talking probably late last year, if I'm not mistaken, right? But even for you and I to start either talking about how you can use AI to drive PM, how you can use AI to drive PM efficiency, there was a whole bunch of things that happened at SentinelOne in order for them to even think about AI adoption and even think about role-based type of transformation. So I'm curious, if you can rewind the clock back, tell me what was going on within the organization. What was the mandate that was given to you? And how did it come down to you and your shoulders?
Yeah, absolutely. So I must emphasize SentinelOne is an AI powered cybersecurity company. So AI is not a strange
Yes.
concept for SentinelOne.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you to
but
our
I think
friends in
that,
Dallas, Texas. Sorry. Go ahead, Eldad.
yeah. And yeah, welcome to everyone. And that's not a strange topic or concept for the products that we offer to customers.
Yeah.
At the same time, with all the different transformations and innovation and ingenuity in the area of AI, now it also come into play in the aspect of how we operate, how productive are we, and of course, how can we really scale and go in hyper velocity in what we do. And you asked about what I was mandated. So as an L&D professional coming into SentinelOne and being given this opportunity to support our technical and product groups
Right.
to achieve more, I think that was the realization in the company that we should definitely harness skills
Yeah.
around AI,
Yeah.
machine learning, LLMs, and finally really make use of it in our day-to-day operation.
Yeah. It's good to, I mean, now it's becoming more and more business as usual to say, how do we actually level up our product teams, right? But if you just go back 6 years to a year from now, the prevalent thought at that moment in time was, okay, you know what? We have AI. How do we bring AI into our product? Just like what you talked about, because SentinelOne is an AI-driven company. But in order for them to then go back and say, you know what, I need to think about how I can just level up my entire organization in AI. It sounds like business as usual now, but a year ago, that was not the norm, right? There were very few pioneers that we were working with, that I was working with, who would actually made that mental transition to say, wait a minute, let's first use it as well as build it, right? And I think that's where I think you guys were a bit more unique, and it shows because you're already way ahead than others. um, I'm curious, Eldad. So when you guys had the mandate and you said, okay, now let's figure out how we can use it. I mean, as a leader in L&D, you had opportunities to go to any type of role to go after first. why did you end up picking on PMs, right? They're not the biggest group, right? But I'm curious to see what was the rationale or what was the thought.
And they're not, yeah, indeed, they're not the biggest group, but I would say PMs, and specifically how we see them at SentinelOne, are the heart and soul of what we offer to our customers, and the this extreme core of how we build and how we operate,
Right.
and what we actually deliver. Okay, and I think that was the place where we gave our PMs the opportunity to really get the AI close to what they do, how they operate, and how they drive their
Yeah.
success. And I think that was a great decision, because our PMs, because they operate through understanding, the requirements, understanding the
Yeah.
challenges, crafting those solutions to really make that impact. They were a perfect match for
Yeah.
us to really embark in this AI journey at SentinelOne.
That's perfect. Actually, for those who just joined in, please let us know where you're from, and if you guys have any questions, um, feel free to drop them in. We try to make this as interactive as possible. Eldad, I think that's good. You know what? You're absolutely right. If you think about it, for any kind of tech company, the product team is the heart of it, because the product team decides what to build, and then the rest of the organization builds it. And so starting there is good. And I remember having this conversation with you and Eli very early on. I said, you know what? Your PMs need to be able to be conversant in both building an AI product and then using AI product, right? Because
Yep.
the analogy I always use is that you would never ask somebody who's never had a smartphone to build a mobile game, right? And yet we're asking our PMs to build AI products, and when they themselves are novices at using AI, right? So it makes perfect sense. So if it's okay, let's continue with the story. So you guys decided to focus on product management. I know I talked to Eli and Rick. Um, so tell me more about just the program that you guys thinking about. How did you guys go about doing it? What are the nuts and bolts, especially for other L&D leaders out there who are trying to put something else together in the same way, right?
Absolutely. And we pointed out, we selected the PM group, where PM team. It's not the biggest one, but still very significant one, SentinelOne.
Yeah,
And the one thing that we, as any professionals that embark in an AI adoption or transformation journey, and in organization, is to understand this is not just a technical aspect. It's far beyond this. This is
yeah,
a cultural change, a
yeah,
mindset change for the organization as a whole. And the one thing that is, I think, the most significant when you even approach it, is to understand, what are you trying to achieve.
yeah.
Okay, because
The
if
very heart.
you don't have the end goal, it will be super difficult, and on the way it would start getting
Yeah,
squiggly. Okay, so
very
you
much.
want to be
Yes,
very, very on top of what you want to achieve. And and you mentioned Eli Khan is our VP of product at
yes,
SentinelOne. And I think the one thing that made this such a valuable and significant program is that we had such a close collaboration between myself, between Eli, and you, as we approach the program and start discussing
yeah,
what do we want to achieve and how we're going to do it, right? And the other thing is, also thinking about what is the within, what is the in it for our PMs,
yeah,
because we realize this is a cultural change, a mindset change. It might cause some fear, some
yes,
rejection, okay? And we must emphasize to those that we wish to go and join us in this journey,
yeah,
what are the benefits. And I
yeah.
think that was an important aspect.
I agree. I mean, I remember one of the conversations we talked about is how do you overcome some of the internal resistance that you're gonna have, right? So how do you
Yep.
overcome people and PMs worrying that their jobs are going to take over by AI? And then once people realize, or PMs realize, how it can actually enhance but not take over, it changes the mindset,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Because it's easy to fear something that you don't really know, and then you realize, like, oh, wait a minute, this can actually literally can make my life easy. I'm curious, when you guys were putting the program together, and I know, the three of us put the program together. Um, what were the biggest challenges, right? So you talked about, fear, of course, from the PMs. Were there any other internal hurdles that you guys had to overcome? Um, other type of, I know tooling was a big one, because I know you guys were trying to figure out which is the right tool to use and so on and so forth, which is
Yes.
also very common. Um, anything else, at least from an L&D organization perspective, that was a challenge?
Yep. And the biggest challenge from the L&D respect is to understand what should we put into the program to make
Yeah,
sure that we really come out of these outcomes that we are
yeah,
scoping, and how much handholding is needed. Okay, so
mm,
how much technical to take it, because we're meeting these PMs, each one in different technical levels,
yeah,
or like you said, resistancy levels. And I think the one thing that made that much easier is the AI confidence that we ran. So the
yeah,
AI confidence survey and the intake session, which I think were the most significant aspect of our program, to really understand how we customize it to this specific PM group. And it's not just general PM that goes through this process, but a PM that is cybersecurity at SentinelOne.
yeah,
And with the insights and input that we receive from our PMs and the leaders of the PM group, it made it so much clearer of how to do it right.
yeah,
Okay. Um, Everything else was just a plus, because from budgeting and understanding the importance as a company. You mentioned the tooling was a bit of a challenge, because we were trying to figure out, are we going for a specific LLM or the other? Should
yeah,
we go enterprise level, or should we keep it only for a subset of the organization? And I'm glad to say that today we have much more clarity on that.
yes,
And the third part, and when I look into this program, I look into four elements. I look into the people, which are the PMs in this case. I look into the processes. What are they currently applying, and
yeah,
where that going to give them the value? The perception, we talked about resistance. Okay,
yeah,
how can we really touch base in those perceptions to take this closer and understand the value? And the
right,
fourth one is, like you said, the tooling, which we covered. We mentioned
yeah,
which way should we go, understanding what are the pros and cons of each LLM. And I remember that one slide you showed in the program, which really made that, wow, okay, now I'm clear. And this, of course, based on your recommendation, but
yeah,
we are have clarity on what to use, when, and how. And I
yeah,
think that was for, especially for practical people, we want to make sure that we use the right tool at the right time and save up time, get
yeah,
that deliverable out of the way. Yeah.
yeah. No, I agree. I think one of the what usually ends up happening when I go with my clients is they start off with one tool and they're like, Mustafa, we're just on one tool. This could be ChatGPT, or it could be Claude, or it could be Gemini, or whatever it might be. And then after we go through the program, they realize, oh, wait a minute. It's not just a
Mhm.
one tool, because each tool does a little bit things differently. And so if the ultimate goal is, like you said, is about productivity and saving time, then you just plug and play the tools, because at the end of the day, they're just tools,
Yep.
right? And so everybody complains that, Mustafa, after you come back, we end up buying more tools than less, because we just realize how much more we can do. Because and prototyping was a perfect one, right? Because we didn't, when we started, you guys didn't really have a prototyping tool, and now you're doubling down
Yep.
on a few of them. Um,
Yes.
so if it's okay with you, let's go to the outcomes, because I know we talked about the program, and I think the
Yep.
program's great, because you're right. We did have it divided up into the intake and then the transformation piece, and then we actually did what was the impact of that, right? So I want to focus on that impact piece, because I know you guys actually went up to the board, if I'm not mistaken, to actually present to them, or
Yep.
at least the senior leadership or executive leadership, to present to them what your PM team will be able to accomplish. So I'm curious to see. I'm curious. Just share with us what was the outcome after the end of the program. What was it that you guys were the most proud of, right? And what was presented to the leadership? I mean, those are three very big questions, but we can start with one of them, right? So let's just talk about general outcome. What did you guys see at the end?
I'll speak it in quite generally. I don't want to get into extra details, but
Yeah,
I would say, the elements that were presented to our board is, how now we can really scale this. Okay, because they understand, they gave us the tool, they gave us a program, show us what you can do with it.
yeah,
And when we emphasized how we can scale it across the PM team and also influence other groups in the process through automation, save up time
yeah,
for daily tasks. And when you multiply it across 60, 70 PMs, you realize this is massive man hours.
yeah,
So finally, they can get that out of the way and focus on the
yeah,
most critical aspects of the role.
yeah,
And learning in SentinelOne is so significant. And when
yeah,
they, through this program and through such processes, we can further reflect the learning culture and how it's continuous. It doesn't stop there. We take it forward and we continue with it. And when we connect these different elements of learning and actually composing those prompts, but moreover automating them, and we used tools like Workato,
yeah,
it becomes so simple and something that a PM is spearheading with, something that he finally got all up and running, could make great use for across the
yeah,
organization,
yeah.
or even give the motivation to come up with something similar.
Agree.
And the one thing that I'm glad, beyond the board meeting and everything, is to see how the PMs that participated are now spearheading our AI champions community in SentinelOne.
Perfect.
Knowledge is spread. That's the
Yeah,
important thing, and this was
that's
what
good.
I.
Yes. And I think that's the way to do it, is that you actually create champions, and those champions become basically
Yep.
they spread the word, right? You mentioned several things. So number one is, which I actually didn't even realize, but it makes a great point, is that for the first time, your board actually saw the impact of AI on productivity at a massive scale.
Yep.
Because everybody hears about it, but there's something very different when you actually see it, right? I'm curious, what were the other aha moments that either you had, or the team had, or the board had after the program? They're like, oh, wait a minute, that's a nice, I didn't even think we could do that. Or were there anything else, other moments that you had that were just like, tube light moments, or things you
So
could do
first of
now
all,
that you cannot do afterwards, right?
So obviously we're clear on the tools that we're
Yeah,
utilizing, so it's easier to understand how we want to
yeah,
really utilize them. But I think one is the motivation and the change in perception. So
mm,
seeing such a group is going through this program with such positive and valuable outcomes,
yeah,
it gives the motivation to the rest of the company. Let's keep it the same pace. And we're
yeah,
talking about pace.
contagious.
One of the things that was, and you mentioned that when we just started to really plan this program, you said you'll see how you pick up the pace as someone that adopts and infuses AI in your day to day. So we want now to make sure that the rest are picking up the pace and staying aligned. Like
Yes,
I said, this is a core team. This is heart and soul, but they
yeah,
have such a big influence across the board. And we're
okay,
seeing this. We're seeing this, and the motivation for uh, capturing and understanding and skilling on AI
yeah,
has really skyrocketed.
yeah.
And from an L&D standpoint, this is a great success.
This is great. And just to give people context, right? We're not talking about just a handful of PMs. I mean, Eldad and team went through a group of about almost 60, 65 PMs, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so we're looking at enabling, empowering, energizing, whatever you want to use it, for a very decent group of people, which is why you can see the impact to the company. I do want to talk about pace for a minute, because I think when product does speed up, it does have an impact on other organizations, right? Good and bad at the same time. Before we go into that, any other things, like any anecdotal evidence that you've heard from PMs or anybody else in the organization after you put the program together? Because I know you guys do just internally collect a lot of metrics and feedback, right? Which is also a very important part of the program, is to baseline, right? We did baselining, or the intake that we talked about first, and then we did a rebaselining at the end to see the difference, and see the difference in the confidence score and time saved, velocity, you name it. But I'm curious, were there anything else that that others have shared with you, just based on the internal data that you've collected, that you are comfortable sharing?
So what I can point out is something that I'm seeing on a day to day, and I
Yeah.
operate with different teams globally. And by the way, just to point out, you mentioned about the PM team. We're talking about a three time zone
Yes.
program we had, which
Spread out
is
across
not to
the
be
world.
taken for granted at
Yeah.
all. Um, but this is our way to make it accessible, no matter where you are in the world, especially
Yeah.
for a global company.
Yeah.
But the
And
one
that
thing
has
that
its
I'm
own
seeing,
challenges, by the way. Challenges both from a time zone perspective, but also cultural, because we have different people in different parts of the world who approach the idea of using AI very differently. So how do you put something together that hits all of them, right? So you guys did a great job. So
but the one thing you see consistently is the spark. Okay,
mm.
especially when we touch base around digital twins, or
Yes,
the and the deep research and elements that are not what I call like a basic layer of AI. So
yeah,
suddenly, no matter where you are in the world, you will see the spark in the eye. You understand the impact, the value, and you just want to get on with it. Okay,
yeah,
and I mentioned earlier on regarding people and processes perception. So perception,
yeah,
it was well perceived. We saw it also in the in our feedback surveys,
yeah.
and how the AI confidence shifted significantly. We engage with the people, with our learners,
Nice.
and we are now also streamlined about the tools. But the one thing that I see a major change and a major impact, and not just in the PM team, and just across the board, is suddenly how processes are being so much simplified.
Yes,
And you can take
yes,
it starting from a simple newsletter and email,
yeah,
okay, and the structure and understanding that when you are testing this out, you're testing it in the eyes of the one that reads it, and
yeah,
not just myself understanding what I want to write.
yeah,
And now I see it in how the company really evolves, is utilizing this AI and utilizing the different tooling we have and automating it. It simplifies what we do, it saves our
very
time,
much so. Right.
and it keeps some consistency and
Yeah.
conciseness. So that's an amazing impact.
I think that's great. By the way, I'm curious, in that newsletter example that you gave, are you guys using digital twins for that one too? Or are you guys using something else?
Well, we are infusing synthetic users, and
Perfect.
obviously,
Yeah.
obviously, digital twins. It pertains to the person that really wants
Yes.
to apply
Yeah.
that concept. But I can say from like the inside information from the program is we had our VP setting up a digital twin.
Yeah.
So suddenly, and when you see a VP that sponsors this program, you know get so excited and such a high enthusiasm into the program, it just gives the massive motivation and inspiration to the
Yeah.
rest of the group, but also shows how it's not something that bites you. It's actually something that
Yeah.
really gives you that
I agree.
childish energy of Let's get that. Let's get playing and really realize how we get it done.
That's perfect. And for our audience there, I know we talk about digital twins, but think of digital twins just as a mirror of you in an AI. So think about, the twin knows about your organization, your product, your team composition, things you need to work on, your KPIs, your OKRs, you name it. And then you can use that digital twin to basically spar and be a thought leader and a thought partner as you go through. And then what I liked about SentinelOne and what you guys did was you took that concept one step further, in which the VP that you just mentioned made his digital twin available to everyone. So now everybody in the organization is saying, hey, I have a meeting with this VP. Let me first ask the digital twin before I go in, because I know I'm going to get asked these questions, right? And so think about how it goes just beyond the idea about just productivity, because now they can ask the digital twin VP before they go into the meeting and be better prepared. And so now the meeting, instead of taking an hour, can take 30 minutes, or you're better prepared, or you can go deeper into the conversation, right? You can think about second order effects. So in many ways, there's new capabilities, right, that it just opens up. And again, it goes back from what you guys talked about, is you guys want to go deeper, not just surface level use, right? This is great. Thank you, Eldad. So I did want to touch back on what you talked earlier, is just the pace, right? One of the things that you mentioned was that now your PM team is just working at a higher clip level, which is great, because they now have more ideas and they can push them more to the market faster. But that does have an impact on the rest of the organization, because now suddenly, if you're doing more, if the product team is pushing more, then there's an impact on the design team. There's impact on the engineering team. There's impact on the legal team, the technical writers team, you name it, right? Everybody now has to readjust to the new pace. So tell me, what are you seeing, right? And then more importantly, how are you guys adjusting to it?
Absolutely. And we started the PM team, I call them the locomotive. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're really picking up the pace. And I said the motivation applies to the other teams. They want, to be at the same place.
Yeah.
And we say pace and we say the impact, we also regard to creativity.
Yes.
Okay. So when this sparks the motivation, it also allows you to be more creative, to be more open-minded.
Yeah.
And going forward, we are going to be running additional programs for and some are just in the planning, but the idea is to get everyone in the same pace.
Yeah.
To have clarity about the processes, the tooling, and to have genuine positive perceptions of AI.
Perfect.
And I think that will be a great, great touch point, maybe at the later phase, for us to also share where we
Yes,
at,
very
where
much
we
so.
are.
I mean, I think one of the, we started off this question with why start with product. But if you start with product, it does have an outsized impact on the organization, right? And so if you're
Yes.
looking for a good catalyst, product teams are a great place to start, because they will force others to drive, right? And you and I have talked
Exactly.
about the fact is that now, like I said, other teams are like, oh my God, I shouldn't say they're complaining, but they're like, wait a minute, we're not built for this type of speed. We need to figure out how we can respond to that, because you have to respond, right? This is just the way it
Yes.
is. I mean, you can go, one of the things we talked about, one of the challenges came up with the idea about taking an idea to prototype in less than a week, right? As the rest of the company, if you can do idea to prototype in a week, the rest of the organization has to be able to respond to that, right? Because otherwise, there's no point product team working fast and then the rest of the team just going at the same pace. It puts a tremendous amount of pressure, which I'm sure you guys are using it to say, okay, now it's time to level up everything else.
Perfect timing. Yeah. Let's get on with it.
Yes, exactly. Eldad, I know the program was a great success at SentinelOne just because of everything that you shared, what you and I have talked offline and privately. I'm curious, looking back at it, and I know you guys are still maybe just a year in, maybe a little bit less than a year, because right, we started talking in November, December. It's been only 6 months, 7 months. I'm just curious, if you look back at it, anything you would have done differently, right? Just lessons learned, sorry, that you're like, you know what, I wish I had done this differently because I think that would have made a big difference, or so on and so forth. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with AI, it's a matter of maturity, both for the organization and
Yeah,
for the technology. Okay. And I think we have reached now to a phase where, with everything we have captured through the program, is that AI is now more mature. Okay? It still
yeah,
has quite a journey to go, but it's more
yes,
mature. I think the one aspect that we could have maybe done differently is the timing. When should
mm,
we have started with it? Okay. As an AI powered cybersecurity, perhaps we should have started it earlier.
yeah,
But the downside could have been, is the AI mature?
yeah,
Okay. So it's you can put it on a scale and decide, was that a perfect
yeah,
timing in that regard of maturity, or whether we should have
yeah,
started earlier and at least
fair,
landed at least the building blocks of that
yeah,
concept of AI instead of just rushing into it. Um, and obviously, just now, like 3 4 months later, we are clear on our tooling.
yes,
So it would have been much more applicable if we had that
yeah,
beforehand. And I think in terms of the actual program, I really liked how it was, rolled out, how it was executed. The one thing that we should have had more is the aspect of practice. Okay, and we talked
yeah,
about, you and I, we talked about the intake part, we talked about the boot camp itself,
yes,
and the actual hands-on. Okay,
yeah,
so I think the hands-on is elementary. It's fundamental,
very much so. Yeah,
and it, like I said, for continuous learning, you can not just hit and run. Okay, you have to keep on going and have these touch points of practice
yeah,
throughout your journey, during the program and beyond. Okay,
yeah,
so
totally, 100%. I think and I'm glad you guys chose that, because I remember early on, we were talking about, like, do we have a practical part to this or not?
yeah,
And I almost insisted that if you don't do the practical part, you might as well be throwing your money away. Because you can't just teach people how to use AI, they have to actually internalize it.
yep,
And that internalization is actually where most of the value was unlocked, right? It's all the things that we did ahead of that was just to get them to internalize, right? And so once they started internalizing it and saying, okay, how can I use AI to transform or change the way I do this task or that task, is when you really saw the team come alive. That spark that you talk about,
yeah.
it took a long time to get to that spark, by the way. um, but that's the whole point, is to get to that spark, because once you ignite that spark, it can be quite powerful, right?
Yep.
And then as for your timing, my insight to you, my friend, is that you guys are still much early. I mean, I talk to a lot of CPOs, I talk to a lot of product organizations. They are just now thinking about, how can we use AI to make our PMs more productive and effective. I mean, you guys made that decision a year ago, so in many ways, you guys are way ahead. It reminds me of a quote, and I forget who says it, but he's like, "The best time to start something was yesterday. The second best time is today." So you guys are way into the yesterday, so it's good. Eldad, we're almost out of time, so I do want to ask you one last question.
Yeah.
Is that, given where you've gone through and the lessons you've learned and the success you had in the program, um, for other L&D leaders, what is the best way to get started? Like, one of the conversations we had right before we got on is like, do you do role-based? Do you do generic training? What's the best way to level up your team? So I'm curious, um, for people who are just now thinking about putting something together, any recommendations or rules of the road that you would say, let's do it this way, and here's why?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with any new technology adoption, whoever takes that lead, and I must say, with the many organization I spoke with, even L&D is the one that takes the lead in understanding. Because
Yeah,
of that, this is a mindset or cultural change for the organization. But one thing is to be clear of what the implications could be.
yeah,
How it could be bring value, and obviously what are the guardrails we need to put in. Okay, and the guardrails would be relevant in which tooling and
right,
how we open it externally or not, and moreover is any legal implications
yeah,
which the company has to be aware that
yes,
it's like a leveling up of your legal teams and your
yes,
compliance teams and your IT teams to realize this is a cultural and a transformation change. But my recommendation is not to hesitate. Okay, and if there is something that is not clear, test it out. Okay,
right,
and we saw that in our program. We started off with one LM, now with working with another. But the thing is that we are clear on what are the values, what are the things that we really can accomplish. And we talked about earlier on, the how in parallel PMs are somewhat similar to L&D, because the one thing that helps us to really take the next step is to
right,
realize what are the challenges we're trying to overcome.
yeah,
So any organization that takes this and embark in this journey, first analyze and understand what are the challenges you see today, how AI can support you as an assistant, not as a replacement, okay?
yes,
As a true assistant for what you do. And when you're clear about these challenges and you're clear about the objective you set, everything will just come around. And
yeah,
the tools, the right tooling, and the applicable applications, so
yeah,
like notebook LMs, and how podcasts are suddenly so easy for learners to
yeah,
to consume data and consume learning. So this is the simplest thing. So think about your challenges, understand what you want to overcome,
hmm,
what are your objectives you're trying to achieve, and how AI will assist you in the way and
yeah,
not replace.
yeah. And I think that's a very important part, especially that last part, is because a lot of organizations are still apprehensive. Actually, there's two things that you mentioned, which I think is really deep. Is number one is that you need to do this in which your legal and compliance team has to be part of the conversation,
Yes.
right? Because they have to level up as well. Because the old ways of looking at it don't apply to large language models. Because if you do the old way, you're basically going to shut down
Yep.
the using of LLMs. And you can't do that because this is just a new paradigm. Like it's like saying, I'm sorry, you can't use Microsoft Outlook anymore, or whatever email tool they use, right? And I think having compliance come in and legal come in as part of the conversation, I think was very smart, because you do need that. And then you and I know the leaders at SentinelOne were very, very vocal that this is there to enhance and not replace, right? And I think that messaging was very important as well, because I think people are nervous. And first, I mean, part of it is just because we have been taught by movies and sci-fi, right, that human beings are going to be replaced, and so it's a very valid fear. And then people start seeing how it is, and then like they realize, oh, wait a minute. I think by the end of the program, when we had gone through the 60, 65 folks, not a single one was worried. Was worried about their job. They were more excited about what they could do now. They could never do before, right? And that's the spark that you talked about earlier. Uh, this is good, Eldad. I know we're almost out of time. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. I know we have your colleagues next week. So we have Eli joining us in about a week and a half, and then we have another gentleman, Ben, who is actually a fantastic product manager in SentinelOne, in which he's going to share with us how he's automated his entire, taking something from an idea all the way into a Jira ticket, end-to-end workflow, and he's going to show that to us. So I'm looking forward to those conversations. But this is great. This is, you always say the first is the best. No. But thank you for coming, Eldad. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure, Mustafa.
Yeah. Thank you.